welcome to the Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week, we take a special look at the 2020 film, The Invisible Man. This is our 293rd movie discussion episode. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have seen it. So warning, spoilers ahead from Denver, Colorado. I'm your host, Jason Henderson, writer of the upcoming And It Is Here this week, Young Captain Nemo, Quest for the Nautilus. Woohoo! Yes, indeed. With me from Austin is Tony Salvaggio, tech director at Rooster Teeth, lead singer and bassist of the band Deserts of Mars, and lead guitarist of the band Rise from Fire. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Howdy. Also in Austin, writer of the long-running underground comic series Halloween Man, Mr. Drew Edwards. Say hello.
Yes, Austin, Texas. We're still here.
We're still here. Yes. And finally, also in Denver, as always, color commentary from, how do I pronounce your name again? Do I say
You say it two different ways.
Is it Guzman or Guzman? Like, is it Julia Guzman of Guzman Immigration?
Hey, so we've only been married 26 years, so I understand why.
I'm just saying that only recently have I become aware that I never say it the same way twice.
Yep. That is
okay.
True.
So, all right. Attorney Julia Guzman of Guzman Immigration of Denver. Say hello, Julia.
Hello.
Wow.
Throat wobbler mangrove. That's how you pronounce it.
It is. I just don't. When I met Julia, her name was Julie, actually.
Well, I went by Julia. It's always been Julia. I just went by
you
Julie.
look like a Julie.
Yeah,
that's funny.
I don't know.
I went by Julie because when I was a kid, Julia was not a common name, and it really annoyed me that I couldn't find anything personalized with Julia on it. So I changed it to Julie so that I could find like bracelets and barrettes and pens and whatever.
That's so sweet. That if you're going to get a little glitter bracelet, it's going to have the name Julie on it.
Now Julia is a super popular name with children.
Huh.
Yep.
All right. So, okay, The Invisible Man is a 2020, brand new, like we saw it this Monday, science fiction horror film written and directed by Leigh Whannell, a contemporary adaptation of the novel of the same name by H.G. Wells, a reboot of The Invisible Man. It follows a woman who, after the apparent suicide of her abusive and wealthy boyfriend, believes she is being stalked by him. She ultimately deduces he has acquired the ability to become invisible. It's an international co-production of the United States and Australia, which is wild. The Invisible Man was released in the United States on February 28th, 2020 by Universal. The film received positive reviews from the critics. It's ostensibly a Blumhouse release, which is wild because they also just released Fantasy Island, which did not receive universal acclaim. Great acclaim in this movie for Elizabeth Moss's performance. As Drew Edwards said, she can really sell being afraid of staring at nothing. It's inventive modernization of the novel's plot and the combination of scares with a smart narrative of how women can be manipulated and abused in harmful relationships. All of that made its way into the reviews. So we are between review sections. We're about to start a new series, but we're not there yet. So we thought, let's take a break and do something new. So let's get some opening thoughts. Let's go with Drew, Julia, Tony, and then I'll go. So Drew, we did our whole Invisible Man series last time because we were touting your Invisible Man graphic novel. So tell us what there is to see here.
Well, this is an interesting movie because it's yet another attempt by Universal to reboot their monster franchise, but this one seems like it's actually gonna stick. And you know, the first thing I have to stress for anybody who has not seen this movie yet, and is just kind of on the fence about thinking about it, knowing that it is attached to that Universal Monsters brand, don't expect it to be fun. It's not. It's like an hour and a half of having someone put their boot to your throat. It is very tense. The other thing it is not is nostalgic. It is not nostalgic at all. It is ultra modern, if anything. Like I would say, you know, there's none of the sort of gothic Victoriana that we would associate with other attempts to redo the monsters like that you saw in Penny Dreadful. It's definitely not like the action driven mummy movies. This is definitely a horror film. So if you go in with that in mind, that this is not going to be any of the monster adjacent stuff that you've seen. This is a really impressive movie. Like, this is, I watched it with my wife in a crowded theater, and everybody was edge of their seat, and the amount of tension they get out of absolutely nothing is amazing.
Yeah.
Elizabeth Moss is like, it's basically a one-woman show, and she is terrific at showing how tormented this woman is, and it just really sells that aspect of it. It's very timely, obviously, and a lot of people have commented on that. There's a few things that I take issue with, and I will get into it. There's a couple of lapses in logic. I also think some of the choices that even though I understand them, some of the choices that they make with the invisibility, I have, nitpicky fanboy bullcrap with, but I'll save that for later on in the discussion. Overall, this is a really good horror film. It's very creepy and very disturbing at times.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. That's a good kickoff. Julia, what are your thoughts?
I'm going to use a strong word, so if any small children are listening, mute it now. This fucked me up so bad, this movie. Oh my God.
Really?
I was just oh my God. It really messed with my head. Yeah, it's really hard to watch. I mean, it's really good. It's really well done. And for sure, I think that if you could get an Oscar for, like a horror movie or a suspense movie, whatever you call this. What would you call it, horror? Or do you call it suspense thriller?
Sure,
I know you said that suspense thriller is a subset of horror anyway. But anyway, Elizabeth Moss is just amazing. She does such a good job. But no, it really screwed with my head because there's so much I have clients and friends and people I know, but particularly clients who have been in abusive relationships or who are in abusive relationships with men that they cannot leave, that have completely controlled their lives. And it's just, I was just watching this going, I don't know, I like really felt it, like I was in her place, and just how awful all of it was. Plus I'm claustrophobic, so the idea of getting thrown in in an institution, in any kind of cell, but especially in the situation she was in, where she's like chained to the bed, or like cuffed to the bed. I was freaking out. I was like so freaking out. But anyway, really good movie, really scary, really, really hard to watch, I think. And as far as the acting, like she's it's like she's scared of something that's not there. It's even harder than that, because she's actually acting with a person in a green suit, or whatever you call it. And she said that the person wears like basically a body condom. She said, she goes, there's literally nuts, because you can see every single curve. And so I imagine not only is it hard to act with somebody who's not, the character, but also it's kind of funny because they're like this green. So I imagine it's even more difficult. But it's really impressive, and the effects are great. I love the effects. I thought it was really, really good. And the place that they lived in was just gorgeous. Some of the sets were really neat. Yep.
Wow. Thank you very much. Tony, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I was on the fence. I wasn't, if it hadn't been for doing this for the podcast, I didn't feel like, or until also other friends of mine who I trust said, go see this movie. I liked Upgrade, mostly about 95% of Upgrade I really, really enjoyed. I think the director is really great. I was not going to see Super Stalker Gaslight movie. That didn't appeal to me currently. And then a bunch of people said, hey, it's really good. So I was planning on going to eventually. Yeah, Elizabeth Moss is amazing. She is super great in this film. There's some nitpicks I have throughout the movie. I think it's, it goes to show, give good people material and let them run with it. Seems miraculous. When that happens, we tend to get good movies, as opposed to The Mummy, which was designed by committee and had this whole and thought franchise first instead of movie first. I don't know why Hollywood can't learn this. They seem to just do it. I guess it's just what you do.
Say more about that. So you mean in other words, don't even worry about trying to set up a world. Just do a good movie. Yeah.
Well, the original
Universal wasn't doing that at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
that makes
happened
sense.
by accident in the original movies, and I think that's maybe they'll have. First of all, I also think it was asinine to try and do horror characters as superhero characters. Nobody wants these characters to not be villains.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot to be said about this movie, which really zeroes in on what I think is the primary characteristic of the Invisible Man, which is his sadism. And
Sadism and narcissism are
yeah,
his two
eh,
basic traits. Even though he's albino and horrible, his narcissism feeds into once I'm invisible, none of that matters
It's true.
in the
Yeah.
original. So yeah,
and so this is, even though this is a pretty radical reinvention of that character, it keeps what I think makes the Invisible Man scary in the good versions of the Invisible Man. And I guess I'm getting ahead of us, and I'm talking over.
Well, no, but
Jason
this
at
is a good place to start. I think. By the way, I don't have any opening thoughts. I just want to go straight into it. One thing I wanted to call out is that in this movie, we always hear that the way to like get the audience interest is to raise the stakes. Are the stakes high enough? How are the stakes? And this movie says, no, screw that. The stakes don't need to be high. The stakes need to be personal. And in the theory of this, you will watch a movie if you are really interested from moment to moment in what's going to happen to X person. So this, he's not a supervillain. He's not out to like crash the space shuttle. He just wants to
the
harass.
stakes are
Yeah.
high. The stakes are
Mhm.
high. That's the difference. The
Yep.
stakes are high on a level that people can empathize with, or
Yes.
hopefully, or at least be wary of. I mean, Julia's reaction. I gotta say that having witnessed abuse firsthand from when I was at a very young age,
Mhm.
some of my early memories, not so great.
Yeah.
Again, why I kind of didn't want to see this, and I'm not. It's effective, but I'm tired of. I think enough crappy rich guys win a lot of times.
Yeah.
So I'm not. I know that's part of the movie needs a villain, but watching that constantly happen was tough. Which
Yeah.
is but I think the stakes are. I think it's the opposite. I think the stakes are always high for her, but it's not at a comic book level, and that's the difference. This is true horror. This is true horror in a way that sheds a mirror, like we talked about a bunch of times. This is a horror about abuse.
Yeah.
And with the trappings of sci-fi added to the horror. But
well, in a way, it's the same thing. I guess what I'm saying is we tend to forget that high stakes can mean lots of things. You are totally, absolutely right. So I stand corrected. Totally valid point, because we tend to think, hey, make the stakes high, and we think, oh gosh, that means nobody's going to want my story or my script or whatever unless like somebody's aiming a nuclear missile at Washington, or somebody's going to use their power to do whatever. But in this case, it's like, no, it's whatever will keep the audience watching, or turning the pages, or doing whatever. And I hear you exactly right, which is that for me as an audience member, wanting to know whether Elizabeth Moss is going to survive is just as high a risk to me. It's just as threatening, and it makes me feel as anxious as any of those high tension things. And
plus, come on, man. Like, who are you what's gonna really just hit you right in the gut? This or Armageddon or Megastorm?
Right.
This. You know
Yeah,
why?
because those are silly.
You can see this happen you don't have to be the Invisible Man to be that rich asshole.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, we can see those rich assholes all the time. And Julia actually, whether or not they're rich or not, Julia's actually got clients who have to deal with this shit on a daily basis.
That's true.
That's fucking horrifying.
No, it
That
is
alone
horrifying.
is
And
horrifying.
as an immigration attorney, they're not just dealing with an abusive husband, but they're dealing with somebody who is constantly threatening to get them deported, or like keeping them from, like if they're relying on the person to help with, language issues, language barriers, or any kind of resource. So they can't even they can't even leave and be able to communicate or trust that they're not going to get picked. It's awful. It's awful, and people will be so cruel when they know they have control over you and you don't have a way to get away. Because once they start, it escalates, and it just gets.
So let me ask you a
really bad.
question about that kind of thing, because this is a story that I think if you were teaching, show it in your class, nowadays you'd say, hey, there's a trigger warning. If anybody doesn't want to watch this, they don't have to.
Yeah.
But how do
Mhm.
you, as a viewer, how do you sit through stuff that is really, really hard to watch or offensive? Do you just do it? Do you just I used to, when I had babies, I was always really super sensitive about kids getting killed. Now
You
that they're
still are.
practical, yeah, I am, but now that they're practically adults, I'm not as sensitive about it. I'm not.
And
as
I got
scared
to
about
see
it.
this firsthand.
Yes.
Jason and I used to go to movies all the time and watch whatever the hell, nothing mattered. And then
Yeah.
I watched Jason walk out of House of a Thousand Corpses.
That's true.
And I
That's true.
hey,
Yeah.
whatever makes you want to and again, I wasn't like, oh man, you couldn't take it. As
Yeah.
a friend, we talked about it. I was like, wow, man, that's a big difference between, 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, that's true. It was a
And,
huge difference.
we had a
Yeah.
discussion where you go, hey, I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
It's things in that area have changed. And, I didn't see it and I also realized I didn't see it the same way, and maybe I should have.
Well, but also it's very personal because it's changed again.
Yeah.
I mean, in other words, I wouldn't walk out now because now I've been either desensitized or I'm just not at that very vulnerable point in life.
Mhm.
And also different people take things different ways. Like my mother was traumatized by tornadoes, but she dealt with that by watching a lot of tornado movies that she thought were hilarious.
Well, like I said last time, that Katerina dealt with her issues with Five Nights at Freddy's by just starting to like draw them and read about, like just do as much as she could to kind of immerse herself in the universe so that it wouldn't be.
Yeah. So anyway, I found myself in this film squirming a lot of times because I knew where the movie was going, that eventually Elizabeth Moss would get out of it, right? But when she's in it, when she's tied up, when she's being held in the hospital, it's very hard to watch.
Well, I will say, knowing that they, again, if you're watching this and you expect us to not have spoilers,
we have a spoiler
listening
warning.
In, I know. I'm just saying, like, you come to the wrong place. But watching it, I will say I wasn't so sure she was going to get, in the way that they were trying to set it up, that I knew that they were setting up for Dark Universe.
Cool. Good point.
I wasn't necessarily sure that. I was pretty sure she would get out of it, but I didn't know if it was going to be as clean as eventually it ended up. I expected to kind of end at the kind of mid or 3/4 of the way through the third act, actually.
Yeah. This is a
Yeah.
spoiler
That's
for
why
Candyman.
this was the right.
Oh,
Go ahead.
sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I said that's why this was the right way to do it, as opposed to what they were doing with the Mummy.
Yeah.
Is that when you have a story that is a little more unconventional and is not necessarily, you're taking a character like this that everybody knows and sort of turning it on its head a little bit,
Yeah.
and saying, okay, we're not going to make it about the monster, we're going to make it about the victim.
Yes.
I think it becomes a lot more. First of all, like, you're able to surprise your audience a little
Yes.
more, because like if you want a movie that's just going to follow the Invisible Man around doing Invisible Man things, like we already have that. It's the James Whale one, and it's really good, and you should just go back and rewatch that. But like this, yeah, I was kind of like Tony. Like, I didn't know necessarily that she was going to get out of it. Like I kind of wondered if Griffin was going to get away at the end a couple of times, and
Yeah.
that makes it scary.
Well, I was just going to point out, and this is a spoiler for Candyman. So if you don't want to hear a spoiler for Candyman, you should jump forward about 45 seconds. But in that one, it follows an arc very similar to this, where she's being accused of all kinds of crap, and she keeps waking up and screaming and trying to convince people that there's a monster out there killing people. And it actually turns out that she's wrong. and then she's the one doing it. It could have gone that way. This is what Tony's saying. It absolutely could have turned out that Elizabeth Moss was completely screwed, either against her will, like somebody else is doing all the crimes, but she's going to go down for it, or that we've had an unreliable narrator the whole way.
Well,
But
and
it doesn't-
especially if
Well,
let's say that the brother had turned out to be the killer the whole time, which is what they assume,
Mhm.
which is what her friend assumes. then she really would be gaslight. I mean, it wouldn't be gaslighting because she really would feel crazy because she'd be like, no, it's whatever. Maybe it didn't smell like, I don't know if it smelled like him, but the point is, like, he talks to her a few times and it sounds like him, and he says these things that connect that feel like a thing that only her husband would say. So if it turned out that it was in fact the brother the whole time, I mean, that would just be really hard too, because you really believe that we believe, not them, but that it's her actual husband. So then you do kind of wonder for a little bit.
I'm still stuck on Jason's interpretation of Candyman, which I disagree with, but I'll save that whenever we actually talk about which is something we should do this year. Actually,
if I'm wrong about Candyman, then I apologize.
I think it's open to interpretation, but I don't want to derail this into a Candyman. Other than I think that's an okay comparison to make with this movie. I do think there's a lot of Candyman in this movie.
But it would have been really interesting in this film if they had left. I'm glad they didn't, because it would have bothered me a lot. But it could have been left to our interpretation as to whether her husband actually was doing any of it, because the way it works, like if in fact the brother had done all of it, and then the husband, because the whole business, the husband says, hey, I was just a victim, I was tied up, whatever. But thankfully, thank God, the movie actually tells us, no, it's him. Because when he does the whole surprise thing, and like there's a few things, like the things that, like I said, the fact that he talks to her and says things, and so we know that it's him. But it would have been pretty easy for the movie to make you not really know if it was actually him, if it was just the brother. That would have been really obnoxious.
And for the listener, and for me, because I've forgotten, why are we certain that the brother was scammed by Evil Adrian to like the brother was not the one at fault? Why are we certain?
Is it just scammed? I mean, he was totally in on it. He was just he's a
dude, like
master manipulator.
Everything you need to know about that guy, you learn within the first 5 minutes of this movie when you see the way she's kept prisoner in her own
and
home.
When you see him punch through the window of her car and then produce, and then he has the drug, he gets the pill bottle from the street. We see it fall in the street, and then he brings it to her bathroom.
You're right.
So
there's never
like
be a
you say he's not a super villain, but he's obviously very meticulously planned this out like a super villain. And the only thing about this, before we get too far away from this, like the business of switching off who is the Invisible Man and who is not, the one thing, because I know that, again, this is attached to the Universal Monsters brand, and I get why they did it, because it is a plausible technology that people are already experimenting with. But the one thing I will say the fact that it is a suit, and this is nitpicky, it's nitpicky, I admit it. I'm saying this before I even state this. The fact that it is a suit instead of a biological component that he cannot turn off. The one thing that they will also, even though he is still very much a human monster, the Invisible Man in this movie is not a literal monster the way the old one is, and I find that a very
that's an
kind of low key. It's a low key ballsy choice.
It is. He is basically well, first of all, so do you consider like Michael Myers to be a monster?
Yes.
Yeah, because he dies and comes back 1,000 times.
Michael Myers doesn't come. Well, okay,
Michael Myers is effectively.
All right, is Patrick Bergen in Sleeping with the Enemy a monster?
No, he's a regular evil guy.
In this movie, is basically this is Sleeping with the Enemy if Patrick Bergen were also Tony Stark. Bottom line.
Yeah,
right.
This is almost like if Iron Man was
imagine
evil.
If Tony Stark were evil like this, we'd be so not we, but the world, the universe he's in would be so screwed.
Well, evidently, if you're rich enough, according to this movie, though, if you're rich enough, you're just also Batman,
right?
Yeah.
Because I mean, you can work out, but the way the way that the scene in the asylum happens, he's fucking Batman.
Yeah,
right.
No, there's a lot of things that stretch the imagination.
What?
There's a lot of things that stretch the imagination. The ability to move really fast and how strong he is do not have anything to do with this suit.
In fairness to the security guards in that asylum.
The cop, what's the cop's name? Her friend that she's staying with?
Yeah.
If you
That guy.
saw, like, if someone got the drop on you and you saw somebody kind of flickering in and out of visibility, I think you'd be freaked out enough that somebody
course.
might be able to overpower you.
Yes, but none of them. I mean, there's like there's a dozen,
Yeah,
and
he
the
does.
other
He goes
cop.
down the hall attacking them
I mean,
like Batman going
he's
after them.
Batman. At that,
Yes.
Yeah, well, he
like
can't. But they
being
can't
rich does not make you a Batman.
Yeah, they can't see him, so it's harder to see what they're fighting. Now, I will say that the brother, is actually the one who attacks the friend, who I'm going to look up here what his name is.
Yeah,
But,
and he's
his
even
name is
doughier.
Aldous
He's
Hodge.
even doughier than
And that,
his
but that
brother.
guy, there's no way that, because he's just on top of him, beating the crap out of him. There's no way that little twerp would have been able to defeat James, is the guy's name. James, like, there's no way. So there's a lot of things that you have to kind of let go of
Adrian
and
looks like
believe.
a pretty big guy, though.
Yeah, but I'm talking
the
about the
brother.
brother,
The
who's the one
brother.
who
No,
attacks James.
the brother is shrimp. The brother's kind of shrimpy, but
Yeah.
Adrian looks like a pretty big guy. Like the
Lifting
stuff
weights
with him.
doesn't mean you're a paramilitary expert.
Right,
Navy
but you
SEAL
don't
James
have to be a
Bond.
paramilitary expert to beat up security guards. They're not that well
There
trained.
are police officers, and all of them have guns. Like, he doesn't just go around shooting everybody. He actually fights with them. Now, maybe the suit enhances your strength or whatever.
Well, also,
But,
again, we have to
whatever.
be
I mean,
given to
it's horror,
understand.
it's whatever. But that, like, again, I thought about it a little bit, and then on the way home was where I was like, oh, so I guess rich buff people are all Batmans.
You're gonna have to assume
okay.
that.
The other kind of lapse in logic that bothered me about this, since we're talking about the brother who gets killed in her cop friend's home, and so the cops now have a busted invisibility suit.
Mhm.
On hand,
Right.
that apparently they believe enough to where she gets off of the murder charge that she is
Of her sister, which,
charged
by
off.
the way, I don't know that there was any reason to believe that she did not kill her sister. It is a restaurant full of people who see her holding the knife. I'm like, I don't know that she
again,
would have gotten off of that crime so easily.
So okay. She goes and has dinner with him, and she puts on an invisibility suit and kills him on camera.
Yeah.
And
Off
they
camera.
now know that there is an invisibility suit. I don't care what her cop friend says. There would be some fucking questions about that.
No,
Well,
I
I
don't
would
think so,
think.
because there's only one invisibility suit that they know of, and they have it. So, because she takes the other one and gets rid of it.
I don't know. I don't know.
Here's the lapse in logic, actually, to me, to that was there's no way that Adrian knows exactly how many invisibility suits there are, of which there appear to be 2.
There are 2.
There's
Yes.
no way that he wouldn't go, okay, where's the other one, and search his house top to bottom.
Well, no, that's
Yes.
the.
I mean,
It's
she
not that
hides
he
it in
wouldn't.
the
The
closet.
thing is, no. She created, and this is another thing I don't believe. These are, when we pick it apart, there are some things. She created a panel in the closet where she hides all her secret stuff, somehow without his knowledge, which I find really hard to believe, because they have no doors in that house. The house is made entirely of concrete and metal, so there's no way she's doing construction work without him hearing it. He seems to never leave her alone, and when he does leave her alone, he has cameras everywhere. So I'm like, how the hell did she create this secret compartment? But assuming she created it, that's where she hid the invisible, and he didn't know about that compartment,
Right.
so he wouldn't have found it necessarily.
There's a difference between, oh, is she hiding stuff to escape, and holy damn, where the fuck is my other invisibility suit, which is the most important thing I've ever fucking created, and my brother has died because of it. There's a huge difference between, that's weird that she hid something, and where the hell did she hide my invisibility suit?
Yep.
Yeah.
Because now he has none.
No, he has none. Well, he might have another one. We don't know. But
right.
yes.
But in general, that I was like, how did he not find it? I mean, it's because it's horror movie logic. It's fine. And
I just want to
mention, again, when you watch a movie like this, there's scenes that are maybe cut, or there's, so I give it a little bit of benefit of the doubt, but that bugged me. Also, because he's such a horrible, if he does it, I hope that, I always hope the actor never gets it, but he does a really good job of playing every tech bro, maybe was on a rugby or lacrosse team, date rapist ever.
Yeah.
Like, he is the smarmiest. Oh man, that guy.
No,
when you see him, that character is everything you think he's gonna be.
Well, but bear in
when you
mind,
see
Tony, an
him.
interesting thing, we don't see him. This is what's wild. We learn that. So you're totally right. Everything you're saying is right. But the funny thing is, other than we do see him in shadow, because by the way, for the listener, we open this movie with her trying to escape from her abusive husband, and he comes and bashes a window and yada yada.
Which,
Although
by
her
the way,
sister
is
apparently,
everything that I was reading an article actually recently about how to escape a relationship similar to this.
Oh, is that so?
It'd come up somewhere, and you know.
And so what did it?
Um,
What did it?
but you know
What did it say vis-a-vis this?
how to hide things, how to have your own bank account,
Yeah.
all of the stuff that you need to do.
Wow.
Because I'm a white dude, I have a certain amount of privilege, whatever, but I
Right.
get concerned, I get really concerned for women friends of mine, and especially, like I said, knowing what I know about abuse.
Mhm.
And so I was reading this article, and watching that, watching those steps, like all of this is just really, I mean, this is one, in the same way I told Drew, like, you probably don't need to see was
Hereditary.
Hereditary.
Mhm.
I'm not sure. Maybe the end, by the end, but I could see, if you've been anything anywhere remotely near this, that this would be a movie that would really, because I mean, Elizabeth Moss it's a tour de force, and what she goes through and all the stages that lead up to when she's just trying to get normal, and she even has a support group, but how all that's working out. So yeah, I mean, she when she's sneaking out and everything, it's terrifying.
Yeah. That's a good sequence. It's a great sequence to open with, because there's all kinds of suspense over and over, right down to the amazing thing where she pets the dog, and the and the dog sort of bumps into the car, which sets off the alarm, and she has to scramble over the wall. By the way, his house is it, you mentioned Batman, and it is really funny how his house is practically the Batcave, at least as seen in the
Yeah.
in the
Well, and the
what do you
Iron
call
Man,
those? The
Yeah,
Dark
that's
Knight
like
movies.
Tony Stark's house.
the
Yeah.
Iron Man comparison is apt because it does look a lot like Tony Stark's house from Iron Man 3. At least
That's
that's
true.
like what I thought of.
Yeah.
But remember the Batcave that Morgan Freeman had in those
Right.
movies, where it was just a giant concrete
Also,
square,
also, by the way, if you've been to enough rich tech bro houses,
Yeah.
this is it. Like, there's a whole
It's just so
subsection
gross.
of people who were, really smart people, or got smart and lucky and
Yeah.
made millions, and now they have some power, and a lot of times the way they wield that, and these houses, to American Psycho style houses,
Yeah.
are just I've been to a few. I mean, impressive and worth millions of dollars, but also, there's good.
I know that I'm heavily motivated by pure jealousy, by the way. I totally get that. Nevertheless, it does scream on the screen, it screams obnoxiousness. And also, go ahead.
What's great though is all these sequences that we're talking about and the way that they lead. The director's really great at setting up the kind of horror that this movie is. That scene encapsulates what we're like. This is the kind of movie we're going to.
Yeah.
And I'm going to lead you through this, and it starts here. This is the tension that I'm going to keep. What's crazy is, without much humor, which is usually the way you break up this kind of thing. I would say, a lot of movies go in a really kind of sine wave. They ratchet it up, and it's like a roller coaster, right?
Right.
This one keeps it at about 30% to 40%, no matter what you're doing. I mean, this is an exhausting, maybe not as exhausting as Uncut Gems, which is, I don't smoke, and I felt I might need a cigarette after Uncut Gems.
I didn't even know what that is.
Oh man, the Adam Sandler movie. It's really, really good, but is it intense? But the intensity level that is kept throughout without much of a break, that's a pretty calculated risk. Because too much of anything, it becomes just white noise, and you just get bored. Like, there's only so much of that you can handle. Your body kind of shuts down. And same with like extreme music or whatever. Eventually, for most people anyway, it becomes just this like, I'm bored now. I'm done.
Yeah.
But to keep that tension level,
wow. and
pretty amazing.
I like the relationships they set up. It's not a huge movie in terms of the number of characters involved either. I mean, except for Right, when he's going all ninja through a hallway full of full of guards, like he's the character in what's the Korean movie about the guy who's
Oh,
gonna
Old Boy.
slaughter? Yeah, Old Boy.
You know
I'm
what's
telling
crazy?
you,
too?
I'm telling you, it's Terminator 2 is what
Ah,
that
yes,
is. Like that
that's
whole
true.
sequence made me think of Terminator 2.
Yes.
What's funny also as far as references, and again, people may disagree or director, we want on my
Go for it.
like screw you, but the part at which she's back in the house is basically Paranormal Activity 1 down to
Right.
the
Yeah.
pulling the covers off.
Yeah, the
And the
covers.
way
Yes,
they
yes,
cut between cameras and everything is like,
Mhm.
wait a
Yeah,
second.
that's what I said. Yeah, that's what I said
This
when we
is
were watching it. I'm
Paranormal
like,
Activity
Paranormal
5.
Activity. Yeah,
The
yeah,
part
yeah.
when the movie is at its spookiest is, yes, basically a good old-fashioned spook show movie. And it is
I like
great.
the first one.
Oh, yeah.
But it did feel weird considering Upgrade didn't feel, it was cyberpunk, but it felt fairly new to
What's
kind
Upgrade?
of, as a horror fan, and maybe that's the thing, is like, we watch a ton of this stuff, but
Yeah.
it felt strange to see most of the beats from Paranormal Activity kind of played out again. And maybe that's just how you shoot this. I'm not, it's
Well,
done
I mean,
really
there's only
well.
so many. There's only so many ways you can show an invisible person terrorizing
I
somebody.
got you, but
Right.
It's gonna
the
feel
way
very
it's
much
done
like a
is,
ghost.
although the sheet thing where he's standing on is pretty,
I loved all that stuff. I just want to really quickly. They show us, so like I say, other than the Old Boy section or Terminator 2 section, it's actually not a lot of characters in here, and it's great how efficient the movie is. She escapes. She gets picked up on the road by her sister, who only knows a minor amount of what's going on because apparently she hasn't really been able to communicate much with her sister. Because she gets in the car and the
Right.
sister's like, "What? You brought me all out of here in the middle of nowhere for what?" And then
Oh my God,
husband
that was so
shows up.
stressful. I'm like, go, 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 go,
Go, go, go. But she doesn't know, and so that also
Yeah.
tells us a little bit about how limited her her communication's been. And she winds up at a friend's house, which is apparently either a friend of her sister, a friend of hers, or a friend of their both.
Friend of her sister's, and he's a cop.
And he's a cop.
Yeah.
And she's staying there and sleeping, and it's cute. She's sleeping in a bed with the teenage girl, and she kind of fits into this little family. And for the life of me, since this is a Hollywood movie, I don't understand why there's no romance going on in this
I found that
relationship.
very refreshing, actually.
Okay.
That it was
Great.
simply
Me too.
platonic.
Yeah, me too.
It's fine that it's platonic. I'm just saying that, like, you pick any random movie like Mitchell with Jodan Baker or whatever. If there are two attractive people, they will wind up in a romance just because it's a Hollywood movie. And so it's interesting that they don't.
But it's
That's all I'm
realistic
saying.
that they don't because she doesn't have time for that shit.
Right, and she's
She's dealing with
traumatized.
trying to
Yeah.
recover
I
and
actually
trying
think
to.
I actually think I would have thrown my cheeseburger at the
Yeah.
at
Me
the
too.
movie screen if that had done it, because people who are traumatized, like, so when it's fresh
Right.
trauma, which is what is with her, like
Mhm.
what they're showing with her is absolutely like, like look, I was going through something different, but when when I've had some troubles with my own psychological problems, like
Mhm.
the not being able to even go out and get the mail and stuff like that was all really realistic. So if they had like started to like hook up,
Yeah.
I would have been ticked off because that would have been untrue. I'm glad that they played this to the truth
It's a good
of the
choice.
situation.
It is a good choice for that, but I'm saying it's an unusual choice because mostly a Hollywood movie is going to have the two attractive cishet people get together. Is all I'm saying. Typically you would. So yeah.
Well, they
you're,
don't.
you're
They
Hopefully
don't
it would be
say
really
that.
annoying because she's just gone through all this trauma.
right. No, exactly.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, look, James Bond hooks up with a random treasurer girl like after getting his balls beat by a dude with
But
a
that's James Bond,
that's
and
James
that's
Bond.
like James Bond movie has to have conventions of James Bond movies. A horror
Well said.
movie does not have to do that. And look, they don't say that these people never get together. They're still friendly at the end of the movie. Like
It's not even per se
you can write
important
your
that they do.
Jason, if you want to write Invisible Man fan fiction, you can.
Yeah,
Mhm.
no, for sure. So anyway, I just thought that was interesting. And you say exactly because they don't go down that route, it means it gives us plenty of room to explore the relationship in other ways. The sisterly way that she's moving into this family, that she's an adult, but she's also kind of a sick adult. So they treat her as a vulnerable person, but also as somebody who nevertheless has a position of authority, like kind of over the teenager, which is why when Adrian attacks her relationship with them, it feels particularly damaging and hurtful. And that is just way painful to watch because suddenly you're really scared for her that people won't believe her. When Adrian Invisible smacks the kid.
Yeah,
Jesus Christ.
well, but and especially like I say, when he kills her sister in front of a
Oh
whole
my
restaurant full
God.
of people,
Yeah.
it's so terrifying.
Yeah. So that's
I love the effects of as unrealistic, again, another little unrealistic thing, as unrealistic as it is that there would be an open gallon of paint that would not have dried up and hardened
yes.
in the attic. I love when she like dumps the can of paint down the attic stairs and he
And he's
and
right
suddenly
there.
you can see him for a second. Oh, it's so good. That's so good. Just all those things, all those little effects like that were just brilliant.
And it's a shock. That's a scare moment.
Yeah.
And it is.
That's another thing about this being a low budget movie is that because this isn't crammed to the gills with special effects, like
Mm.
when they do have them, I think they are more effective.
Mhm.
Like when you think about like the original Invisible Man movie, like that movie actually has far more special effects than this one does. Like there's a
That's true.
lot of business of him like taking off bandages, and you'll have like pants running down the street with
Yes.
nobody in them and things like that. And this movie could have done that. But the fact that that they didn't and they showed that much restraint, again, because we already have that movie. And that movie is, almost 80 years old, but it's still great. And
Yeah.
if you're listening to this podcast, I encourage you to actually go check out that one. This one movie doesn't negate the need for that one, and because in fact it illuminates the stuff that's good about that by not doing them in this one, because you now have two different takes on this concept, but one that's like very pulled back, and then one that's very elevated. And I think they're both right. That's the thing. I think they're both very, very, right on, good ways to show why somebody being invisible would be terrifying.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And by the way, we have an episode on that. I don't know if you remember, but we talked about the Invisible Man on this show. And we did, in fact, I think we did two of them. I could swear we also did
we did the Claude Rains one and the Vincent Price one.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, so you can hear our discussion of that. By the way, I have a Claude Rains action figure on my desk right now, looking at me. He's got his little purple robe and his little sunglasses and his stitched up head. I love it. Okay.
I really hope that Universal does learn a lesson with this when they're going forward and doing other monster films. The bigger isn't necessarily always better, and that there is still, and that there's still a audience for these characters as horror characters. Because like a conversation that I've had, I can't count how many times over the years, is like, oh, you can't do Frankenstein anymore because Frankenstein's not scary anymore. Oh, you can't do Invisible Man because no one would be scared of that anymore. Oh, you can't do Dracula anymore because no one would be scared of that anymore. Bullshit. This movie
Get good
proves
people to do them. That's it.
Yeah.
And trust them.
not that hard. Yeah.
Yeah. Hire people, and then when you hire them, because that's who you hired, then trust them to do their damn job.
Yeah.
And that's how time and time again, that's been how you create things. Like, give Del Toro a werewolf movie, or you can make Frankenstein scary. You can make it poignant, bring it back to the original where, the monster didn't ask for any of that. And you can do that. It's been done before. You can make it contemporary. It doesn't have to be a CG filled, adventure movie. You can,
by the way,
tie these together and make them amazing. And I think
just for the
you're
record,
right on it.
I got no problem with any of that either. I mean, if
Sure.
if it's good and enjoyable, I'm all for it. Giant.
Look,
Although
I
that
like
last one was pretty bad.
I like
Well,
this first Stephen Summers. I like the first Stephen Summers movie, Mummy movie. I think I think it's a fine addition
Sure.
to it's good for its time. It's fun.
I didn't see the one with Tom Cruise.
The Tom
Oh,
Cruise
that's
one
one
is
I'm. Yes.
awful. That is an awful.
Yeah, it's terrible.
movie.
Although
It is.
the sequence in the catacombs with the water was pretty damn good, I will say.
I think the mummy herself looks cool, but like
Oh yeah,
that character has nothing intriguing about her other than her look. Like
right.
this,
I do like the Mummy, the adventure Indiana Jones Mummy it's fun.
but
know.
that's also kind of baked into what the mummy is, because the mummy
Right.
is, about like, let's do exploration, it's tied to archaeology. I don't think that that's the wrong, just like if you do the Creature from the Black Lagoon again, you're going to have to probably have some adventure elements. It's fine to, bring it, crisscross genres. This movie is y'all pointed out, it's got some like elements of 90s thriller movies in it. It's got,
Mhm.
because it's the Invisible Man, it's got science fiction baked right into it. And and that's fine. Like, it's okay to crisscross genres, just don't try to make them superheroes, and don't
Right, I agree with you on
assume
that. Yeah.
don't assume you can't take one of these characters and make them scary. Like, there's always going to be something about it that works if you're smart about it. And I think this just goes to show you, not like, because again, this is very much pulling back, like, okay, what is the Invisible Man? Okay, he's a narcissist, he's a sadist.
Mhm.
And the idea of somebody like that who cannot be seen and can, basically do all their terrible impulses, that's scary.
I mean, in
No
this
matter,
one, he's even willing to give away $5 million just so he can take away $5 million in addition to that, because that's his whole
Say
plan.
I
Yeah.
don't remember what.
Well,
what are we talking
Well,
he
he
said
gives her the
he says,
money.
I'll give her.
Oh, right.
But well, he's gonna give you $5 million as long as you don't get deemed or whatever, diagnosed as being mentally ill, and you don't go
Or
to
commit a
jail.
crime.
And
Yeah.
so so then the whole idea is he's gonna make her commit crime. It looked like she committed a
Kill
crime.
her sister because her sister took her away from him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How, like, this is the kind of eat the rich moment where I see all this stuff, except a lot of times rich people still get away with all of this shit. And that's another reason why I was really reticent to see this movie. I'm just really sick of that kind of
like
asshole
swole
just
Jeff
running
Bezos.
rampant in the world, because most of the time they don't get their comeuppance. They just get richer. But he's willing to fake his death, manipulate his brother, give someone $5 million so he can kill their sister and take away that $5 million. So when she's doing things like, what else? You can't take anything else away from me. I'm just like, oh, we all feel, everyone in the
You're like,
theater
"You wanna
feels the
bet?"
dread
Yeah,
of
of
no, don't do that.
Mhm.
Like, because he's horrible and he'll find something, because that's how he works too, in before getting an invisible suit, evidently through his brother, who ends up being pretty craptastic and complacent once he's full on, hey, by the way, I'm in cahoots. Oh,
well, like, to me, the one of the worst things in this movie that he does to her is when you find out that she was saying that she was taking birth control.
oh yeah.
And then they, later on in the movie, the brother, when she's in an insane asylum, the
when
brother
she finds
comes
out
along, she's pregnant. And he's basically
Yeah.
like, okay, we can make all of this go away if you just keep the baby.
Mhm.
And that shit was so evil.
Yeah, I want to
Yeah, he's like, did you not know that did you assume that he didn't know you were on birth control? Of course he knew, and he just replaced your pills.
Okay, so after her sister is killed is when this
and that's
kind of
horrifying again.
Oh,
Like,
yeah,
No, it's
just-
awful. She's just talking to her in they meet in a public place. They meet in a restaurant. The sister is already mad at her because he has sent her the sister an email from our heroine's email account saying, "I never want to talk to you again," blah blah blah, like all this mean shit. And so when she goes to try to get her sister's support, that's when she finds out about this email. So then she finally says, like, I really want to see you, please. So they meet in this restaurant, and while she's talking to her sister, the sister kind of looks over Elizabeth Moss's shoulder, and Elizabeth Moss is like, "What?" And the knife is like floating next to her, and just slashes the sister's throat, and then he immediately puts it in her hand, Elizabeth Moss's hand. So before anybody knows anything, they're looking at Elizabeth Moss holding this bloody knife, and this girl whose throat has just been slit, like bleeding out. And there's no, like I say, I think it would have been a lot harder than just, we found an invisibility suit for them to necessarily clear her from this. I think they would have eventually, but I don't think it would have been instantaneous, because, just because that exists doesn't mean that the restaurant didn't see her with this knife. Like, I don't know. I just think that would have been harder to sell. But anyway, so they take her to the asylum, and she's like, she knows for sure that he's going to be in this room with her, while she has her, she's cuffed to the bed. Now, I'd say thankfully they sedate her. And I say thankfully because his intention is never to kill her. It's just to make her crazy. So at least she's able to spend a night of like just sleeping, and he's just sitting around waiting for to be. He probably was actually quite frustrated, because he's like, well, crap, now I'm trapped in here too, and I can't mess with her because she's asleep.
He's probably creepy enough that he just enjoyed watching her.
Yeah, maybe.
Do you think, but before we move on, how much? So one of the big things that's been in the news. This is one way you could put this: is this is the Me Too. This is the Believe the Women version of. In other words, but movies are always allegories for real things, and they're just sort of more extreme. Here, this person knows that they're being victimized by somebody, and nobody in their life believes them. In fact, they're all like really infantilizing, like, "Oh, honey, I know you think that, blah blah blah." Whereas she's the only one saying, "No, I'm not talking about whatever it is you think I'm talking about. This guy is a scientist, and I'm telling you this is a thing that's happening." And it's pure gaslighting, oftentimes by people who should know better. These various other people in her life, and I don't know if it was intended as that kind of political allegory, or if they just got lucky that it's that it fits in with conversations of the day.
Now, Julia, one difference though, when you say, "Hey, it would have been hard for her to clear," is when they finally get the suit, he has actually assaulted a police officer, a super buff police officer. So the believability of, "Hey, look at what happened. You can remand her into my custody where she's been before," is actually, to me, was fairly believable. So
I'm not saying that she wouldn't have eventually gotten off. I'm just saying that when you have somebody arrested because they're holding the murder weapon, and they're in a public place and everybody saw it, it's going to be a lot harder than just, there is. I mean, yes.
Well, his testimony is going to go along a lot further.
Sure. Yeah.
And that's why. No, I get where you're coming from. It didn't bug me, because once he's been absolutely destroyed by an invisible suit guy, and also a bunch of cops have been shot through the knee and been beat up.
Right.
Then it's different than if they just found the suit. Like, she goes, "Look, when I try it on, I'm invisible."
No, agreed. But yeah, I think that the whole the fact that she finally, because it really is, again, it's a really good setup with I guess the 3-act structure or whatever, where once again you go, I can't, I'm not sure that she's going to be able to get away from this guy, because he seems to have created the perfect crime, the perfect alibi, where he's like, "Oh, I was locked up, I was tied up in this cellar," and so it's stressful all over again because she's like, "Well, crap," and now she's stuck with this guy again.
Because they're not going to believe her. Everybody's still going, "Look, he was tied up. Like, how could that happen?" And she has to insist. She has to pull by the way, an invisible man beat the hell out of you.
Yeah.
Are you going to believe the person who talked to you about Invisible Man?
Yeah.
Or not? And he finally goes, "Okay, well, you saved my daughter. I
and
guess
that's the sleight of hand that the movie does, because we see her say, "Okay, Adrian, I'll go have a peace talk with you." But it's actually a ruse, because now James, who is not stupid as many movies would have him be, James agrees, and he's got her wearing a wire, and she's there to. What he doesn't know is that she's gone back to murder her ex-boyfriend, because he will never, never, never.
I don't think that they could have had this. I don't think they could have had this. I mean, I wasn't, while watching it, I wasn't sure whether or not Griffin was gonna get away or not, but like having thought about this now for several days, I don't think that they could have had this end any other way after watching this woman suffer for almost an hour and a half. And
Yeah.
I it is noticed, like, this is a very without ego performance in a lot of respects, because like Elizabeth Moss is not looking like glamorous actress through most of this movie, and this last scene is the only scene where she looks like put together, and this is the scene where she kind of takes her power back and eliminates this SOB. So, and I have to think that was a deliberate choice, but like I don't think that as much as I feel like there's some faulty logic in the way she goes about doing this, I think she had to kill him, and like his threat had to be ended with like a totality. It had to seem very final, and
Right.
that's what this is.
It's also the end of Sleeping with the Enemy in a way. Remember, she straight up shoots Patrick Bergin in the chest. I'm sorry, spoiler for Sleeping with the Enemy. That's, but it's very, very much very similar to how that movie ends.
By the way,
yeah,
and again, it's horror movie stuff, but it bugged me that A, she had a gun right in front of her. It didn't shoot the crap out of him in the hallway, but she was right there blinking on and off. And B, anybody who's watched any horror movie should know when the antagonist is on the ground, just put 2 in their forehead.
right.
Just that. She shot him in the chest, and he's, instead she goes, oh, well, because they have to do the thing where they do the reveal, right?
Yes.
So I get it, and that's why, but in reality, it just bugs me a little bit even now, and I know we do this, we watch all this stuff as like when you have a very reality-based movie, and then you're supposed to still go, oh, well, it's horror movie logic.
Yes.
Because everything, much of it is so smart that the stuff that isn't bugs me more.
That's the fine line that movies like this have to walk.
And I get, like, absolutely, it has to have the reveal. It wouldn't be the reveal if she just blew his face off.
Yes.
But it bugged me that she didn't super make sure.
Yeah.
Or he's such an asshole, just, shoot him right in the crotch.
Yeah.
Just to make sure.
In that final scene where they go have dinner, it is interesting how she talks to him, and you kind of wonder. So I agree with you, Drew. Because she's suffered so much, we're ready to forgive her for murdering him. But before she does that, I think it's interesting that she does walk him through a conversation where he has a chance to confess to his crime. And you kind of wonder if she would have cut him some slack if he had confessed. But
I don't think she would have at this point.
I don't think so. Plus, that dude's going to get away with everything forever because he's rich.
Yeah.
So,
no, it's true.
Well, I mean, they basically, his lawyer brother basically says as much when she's in the insane asylum, when he's like trying to float a deal by her. This guy has a technology that would be incredibly useful to the military industrial complex. So like this guy who's already rich was about to become like, fuck you, rich.
Oh, and also if he sold it to the military, if she became any kind of threat to that deal, she would quickly disappear.
Yeah, no, it's true.
There would be some form of accident, like invisible technology given to the military, and she's gonna stop that. That person goes away for good.
By the way, I'm sorry to harp on the Tony Stark thing, but can the Iron Man suit do this? Like, can't Tony Stark's suit already turn invisible in the Marvel movies?
There might be an invisibility suit. There's an episode of Batman the Animated Series which basically has the suit in it.
James Bond has an invisible car that does this. It has cameras all over it.
Well, this technology is something that they have been trying to develop since Predator, because because a guy in the Pentagon saw Predator and said, I want a suit that does that. So like there is versions of this suit out there, but they're big and bulky and they don't work quite as well.
I imagine
Like,
they're
well,
more
the ones
they're
that we know about.
I imagine they're less for suits and more for bombers, for planes, because they want to be able to, to get over a country without being seen. So I think there's probably more of that.
that is, they've already kind of, I mean, it's going to get better and it could use the camera system and stuff, but the way you do that is different. What they really want to disguise a lot of times is transports and large swaths of like a tank battalion or where we store a bunch of vehicles. People is fine and you would get that advantage, but what you really want is that kind of stuff, and they've been working on that pretty hardcore. And been decently successful with some of it, but it does, there's a lot of, the problem is in the real world with particulates and the way things work, it's a little harder than it would seem. But they're also working, I mean, there's a lot of research done on for example, how the cuttlefish can change its shape and then do crazy patterns. So there's a lot of biomimicry that they're using in addition to the optics camera stuff.
Which is why I don't understand why they still didn't. I guess because for the twist ending, they needed something that could be turned on and off. But I still really would have rather preferred it to actually be something from the guys that is a biological thing as opposed to like something that is a suit, because to me that's like, again, this is a nitpick, but I don't know. There's something more interesting about that to me than.
Well, you can also do, again, this has nothing to do with the choices that were actually made, but in that case, you could also do a lot with a person who does this because of his narcissism so that he can get back at her, but can't reverse it.
Yeah.
So if he has to stay invisible, but he does try to get her and it is important for him to have his child, that is even more, he might be even more frustrated and unbalanced because he did it, he took a chance, right? In the way that Griffin takes a chance when, in the original. But if he can't reverse it and yet he's still doing all this stuff, there's a lot you could play with that as well. Maybe somebody will one day,
Well, when I did, my own version of The Invisible Man, I'm not trying to compare my own writing to this because I made completely, other than really amping up the character's innate sadism, I made completely different choices with this character. But one of the things I did do is play a lot with the sort of body horror elements that I think comes from it when it's something that's physiological, rather than a suit. And so that's just, like I said, it's my own fascinations with that. But I can't really. The other thing that I think I've become more willing to do when you look at these sort of classic characters, I'm a lot more willing to be like, okay, that's not the choice that I would make, but I get why they made that choice. And so I am prepared to do this here because the movie is so good in a lot of respects. But like, it is kind of that is one little nitpicky thing that is a little disappointing to me.
Right.
So, all right. And that brings us, by the way, to the end where she's offed her boyfriend. And by the way, we keep saying boyfriend. To be honest with you, I completely forgot in thinking about this movie that they weren't married. It functionally doesn't.
What makes you say they're not married?
In the write-ups I've read recently, it says that they're not married. That
they're not married.
No point. But I mean, you and I watched it and both assumed that they were married, but apparently this is a point that they never were. It doesn't really matter because she's still inheriting from him. But
I mean, I would assume, I would also wonder sometimes if he kept it that way as well.
Yeah.
Why should I get married?
Right.
Because he's such an asshole.
What a schmuck. Yeah.
I mean, being married is inherently like you do whatever you want. Like, I'm not the police on that, but just that. Usually that kind of person also wants to keep his options open.
Yeah.
Even though he's completely controlling somebody and is obsessed with this person. But that's just the kind of asshole he is.
And we didn't even get to see a lot of it, but she talks about, she has dialogue that tells us all kinds of things, how controlling he was of her, that he controlled what she read and ate and how she talked and all this stuff. And it's interesting that this movie doesn't, because it opens with that scene of her escape, it could have had like 20 minutes of misery beforehand. I mean, I'm kind of glad that we don't, because
I think
her dialogue's good enough,
giving us all of that.
Yeah.
Well, and that scene is so harrowing. I think it tells you everything you need to know about her relationship.
No, well said. Yeah. So, all right. So that brings us to the end, which means that we should get our final thoughts. I know that we could keep discussing this one, but that's pretty fantastic. Let's get our final thoughts, and then we'll go into endorsements. And ahead of time, I know that it's going. I'm going to talk about the Halloween Man thing because I want people to check that out. The Halloween Invisible Man. Good grief. What order did it go? It was Julia, right? It was
No,
Julia,
start with Drew.
Tony.
You
No,
start with
Drew.
Drew.
Drew, Julia, Tony, and then I'll go. So, Drew, do you have any indoor? Oh no, I'm sorry. I'm gonna make an edit here. Okay, let's get our final thoughts. Drew, final thoughts. The Invisible Man.
Like Tony, I was kind of skeptical about this movie. I wasn't planning on seeing it in the theaters. I had been so burnt by The Mummy that I just the thought, and also the cancellation of Penny Dreadful, which was
Although
effectively,
it's back, just so you know, Penny Dreadful's back.
yeah, sorta.
Okay.
But
All right.
that was the sort of Universal Monsters reboot that I kind of wanted, which was straight up gothic, and this is not like that at all. And I also really didn't like The Mummy, but I'm glad that I did go see it after I started seeing people talking about it on the internet and the reviews started coming in, because I think this is a very worthwhile redo. And I think it's one that people are going to talk about for several years. And I'm just glad that Universal finally got their shit together, man. I think that they made a really good choice by letting the Blumhouse people do it. And I hope they learned from this. And, gosh, such an effective movie. Again, I think if you're a Universal Monsters fan like me, I think you do have to get past the fact that this is, again, super modern, not nostalgic at all. But if you can get past that, this is a really, really good horror movie. And I hope that we get more like this and less like The Mummy.
Fantastic. Thank you. Julia, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts are just that anybody who watches this, I hope that you will see women in your life with a different lens when they are maybe in a relationship that you think they shouldn't stay in, or you don't know what's going on and you're like, why is this person saying, or even if they're accusing their spouse, boyfriend, ex, whatever, of something, and you can't imagine that's the case because this person and you're like, he seems like a great guy, I think she's just lying. This is what they're going through. I mean, not the invisible part, but the fear, the part, the gaslighting. That is just, I hope that people watch it will just think about that and understand that that literally you can't see what's really going on in their lives. But yeah, I think it was really well done. I like the effects, and again, I think just Elizabeth Moss is incredible, and she really sold it. It was amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I like the movie. Well directed, like I said, I liked Upgrade. I was looking forward to this next movie. I came into this going, oh man, I don't want to watch another Stalker gaslight movie currently, just because that's how my head is. That I realize that there's probably way worse stuff that I've watched in general in horror, but lately I just feel like evil's winning so much, and it's tiring, and it wears me out. As a person with try to have a fair amount of empathy, and just watching what I'm you don't have to go very far on the news to really just be like, really, can't we band together against all the terrible bastards who win? But I heard enough people that I trust, really like it, and I end up enjoying it. I don't know how many times I would revisit it because it's just so intense all the way through. But it's done really well. The effects are great. I guess something else to add to if you have a anti-monster pack, pick up a can of like fluorescent spray paint, so that when people go, I don't believe that there's an invisible man in the room, you just go pull out the spray paint and go, screw this.
Yeah, right.
So,
well, apparently though, he can instantly wash it off because he washed off the paint.
That was so
no, but it drops all the way. Like there's a trail, but spray paint, but house paint is not spray paint.
Yeah,
it sticks differently.
Yeah.
And you can spray it in his face,
right?
Because for some reason the mace worked. I guess because he has to breathe or whatever. Anyway, add to your monster kit one can of it doesn't have to be very expensive. fluorescent paint in case of invisible manism in your life. But yeah, I thought it was really well. I mean, the acting is just great. I think the relationships were perfect. And that level of tech broness really that person without the invisible suit lives somewhere, and probably several of them, especially in Silicon Valley and San Francisco. They placed him correctly. Let's put it that way. But yeah, I dug it. It lived up to everything that friends of mine have been telling me, and I look forward to more. If the Dark Universe goes in this direction with just solid directors and writers who Universal just gets out of their way and lets them do their craft because they've been proven that they've done their craft, that's fantastic. I'm totally down with that, because one of my big, like, if I had Scrooge McDuck money, which is what I used to gauge just an ungodly amount of cash, one of the things I would do is hire the best of the biz, just the absolute best, and give them like franchises that people normally go, oh man, that sucks. So like, I want people to go, man, I guess I like GoBots now.
Yes.
Or like,
right,
this Monchi-Chi series is really good. Like, who would have thought? Just take franchises that were dead, that there's some nostalgia for, and then just have people, just really, really good people. I would just love to see that, because people's expectations would change. Like, oh, really? They're bringing back that? Ha ha. And then you just like put it in their face because it's actually really good. Yeah. That's the kind of dumb crap I would of course give to charity and everything, but
No, I think
when you have unlimited money, that's the kind of thing I would do, just because I think that tweaking pop culture in that way would be interesting.
I agree. Someday they will do like a reboot of The Love Boat that is like the finest thing that ever was, and we go, I had no idea that I could care this much about The Love Boat.
Well, they already gave Love Boat font to James Bond, so
no kidding. Yeah, I noticed that. We won't get to actually experience it for another 6 months, but yes, or more. It's what, like 8 months away?
Like 8, yeah.
They literally moved it off 8 months. Thank you very much, Tony. Yeah, I was really pleased by all of this. I agree with you completely about the implications for the Dark Universe, because the Dark Universe could become very like the Castle Rock universe, which is to say things that share elements and don't really have to cross over. You don't have to have Dr. Jekyll show up to have something be a universe, and this proves it. I guess it will prove it if something else, if the next one is super good. So I was very pleased with this film. Good choice. We didn't even decide to review this one until like 3 hours before we actually went to see it, and I'm really glad that we did. So okay, let's do endorsements. Whatever you're reading, especially because if you're at home right now, if you, the listener, have been quarantined away and your workplace is making you work from home, we might recommend something to watch. I have friends in Seattle, and suddenly they're working from home after years of saying, "Hey, boss, let me work from home." All of a sudden, they have to work from home,
and the boss saying, "Oh no, we can't possibly make that work."
Right?
Like, oh, wait,
and now all of a sudden, surprise, they can. So yeah,
I'm charged with having to try to figure out how that's all going to work. So that's me and my team anyway. So that's interesting. There's my coming weeks. So
I mean. Good luck. Let me know how it works. Yeah. Drew, what do you got for us?
3 things. 3 things. First 2 things, personal things. There is 1 week left on my crowdfund. I know we are done talking about dinosaur movies, but I still have to talk about dinosaurs for at least another week. So if you have been on the fence about doing, becoming a backer for my crowdfund, this is go time. Go check out one of the links I've posted on our Facebook group. Click on it, look at a perk, select it. Hell, tying it into this discussion, we do have the Halloween Man versus the Invisible Man story as a perk. So if you want to see my take on this material, there you go. So please, we still need, even though we're very close to our goal right now, this is by no means set in stone. So we still need everybody's support. So please go check it out. Or hell, if we reach our goal by the time you look at it and you still want to show support, that's also great, because that's still, if we make over our goal, that still helps my creative team, and that's awesome. Speaking of that, on the day the crowdfund ends, March 15th, right here in Austin, Texas, at Flamingo Cantina, there is Punk versus Rockabilly 10. I've been doing this for 10 years, which means that that we have to have been doing this podcast for at least close to 10 years, because I remember talking about the first one at some point on this show. But this year we have a great lineup. We have the Loch Ness Rockers. We have Burn Band. We have, Jamie's band Danger Cakes. We have Hell Fury. We have an awesome band from Tennessee called Volk, who's coming in to play it. And we have Chump. So it's an awesome lineup. There's no cover. It's a free show. Doors are at 5 p.m. It's 18 and up. And, everybody's like, South by is canceled. They're bummed. If you are in Austin, this is a good time to show your support for local bands, or the bands that still have to come in and play their shows. We'll just call this I Can't Believe It's Not South by Southwest, because a lot of shows are still happening. The unofficial shows are still happening. Yeah. Yeah. The unofficial shows are still happening, and we still need you to come out. It has been really nice seeing a lot of community spirit since the cancellation in the Austin arts community and music community over the last 48 hours. Because I've been in a really angry place because of a lot of the stuff in the news. That has softened my edge a little bit, but because I like seeing my city take care of my city, even when our government fails us. But speaking of being in an angry place, I'm down to the last episode, so it's still possible they could drop the ball. But I've really been enjoying Hunters on Amazon, which is a show set in the 70s, and it's about a team of Nazi hunters. And it's basically, imagine if Quentin Tarantino, back when he still made entertaining movies, made The Boys from Brazil. And that's what the show is. You're either gonna like that or you're not. What I've come to like, a lot of the criticism I've seen of the show is that the show veers very wildly from being campy to being serious. And I guess I get that, but I've come to understand that I like things that have wildly veering tones like that a lot, because it is fair. The show is like that, because it's sometimes you have real drama about the Holocaust, and then other scenes you have a nun shooting Nazis with a machine gun, and in the same episode. And I love that. And it's been a nice channel for my angry thoughts, because I just like seeing Nazis get shot. Go fig. But Hunters is entertaining, and I hopefully the last episode doesn't suck, but I've really enjoyed it.
Temper. In my opinion, you do you, but
hey, I like what I like, Tony. I like what I like.
You should.
Right.
Yeah. We should talk about, when you see it, we should have a discussion.
So you're Tony, you're talking specifically about the final episode in the series.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't like how super villainy they made some of the Nazis, because the actual stuff is horrible enough.
Interesting.
But they don't need to be super villains and do super villain things. But yeah, when I came to the end, I wasn't especially happy. But I want to hear about next time what you think.
I will touch base with you on the social media or in person or something, because it certainly wouldn't be the first TV show that I've enjoyed and then they fuck it all up with the last episode. That's a thing that happens frequently.
I am extremely curious about this. We'll talk.
Message me in a couple of days.
Yeah. Whenever you get through, just send me the thing. Anyway, that's us. Yeah, that has nothing to do with this podcast. Sorry, everybody.
No, awesome. Julia, what do you have for us?
I watched the film Dark Waters, which is the true story of an attorney named Robert Bilott, who lives yet. And he was a corporate defense attorney that defended companies, but somebody who knows his grandmother calls him and says, I need your help suing not suing, but just like with the situation of what's going on in my farm. All my cows are dying. And so it's Mark Ruffalo is the star. And so basically it's the story of this guy going up against, David and Goliath style, up against DuPont, who has been poisoning everyone in this town and really in the world with this PFOA C8 man-made chemical that they use to make Teflon. And as you might imagine, in order to make something like Teflon, you have to create a chemical that's not going to easily, break up in the earth. So basically, it's super toxic, and everybody in the world has it. Almost everybody in the world has at least a little bit of it in their blood forever. But anyway, it's a really interesting, sobering film, and I found it riveting. So I think if you're interested in stories that are not nonfiction but are true, based on true events. I think everything in there is pretty much real. Maybe that some of the names have been changed. I don't know, but it's really, really good. And hearing Mark Ruffalo talk about it is really interesting as well. So and interviews and stuff. So that's my recommendation.
Every time I see that name, though, I only think about the 2002 J-horror Dark Water, which, by the way, is totally
this
different.
Is Dark Waters with the plural.
Yeah, no, I know. But every time I see that, I'm like, oh, the remake. Oh, yeah, but wait, they already remade Dark Water,
right,
in 2005. But yeah, it's like, oh yeah, this doesn't. Also sad that he doesn't Hulk out, and
I know, but he does a little bit, and then he goes up against DuPont, and
that's good.
Makes does some damage.
Well, that's
anyway.
Good.
Yep.
Tony, what do you have for us?
A couple things. Well, Deserts of Mars is playing like 3 South by shows off. They were always off South by. So Stoner Jam on the 19th, which is an all-day thing. We open up. There's like 40 bands in that. We're honored to be part of that. On Saturday the 21st, we have a day show where it's like a part day show, and then there's a night show with a bunch of really cool bands, and Bongzilla's closing that out. They're pretty big in our scene. And then also we're gonna go straight from the day to late day show and go out to Texas Mist and play with our friends in Scarlet Theater. So that day there's 2 gigs back to back, so we had to do some traveling. That feels like old school South by, to be honest with you. Of course we're gonna, I'm gonna bring my own mic, for example, and make sure luckily I have some hand sanitizer, I believe, from a while back. So, and wash your hands. We're going to be safe. But luckily, a lot of venues have decided, hey, let's have some local people. Let's kind of get back to where we were. Let's have a lot of fun, play a lot of really good music, and try to, because again, music's one of those things that I turn to when I'm having a bad time. And so, which actually that leads in. I didn't even mean to make that segue. But I found this YouTube channel for a guy named Bill McClintock, and he does mashups, and they are amazing. He's like next level. There's a lot of mashups, but this is a person who really knows music.
Yes.
I started with the mashup of James Broderhead, which is Motorhead's Overkill with James Brown's Superbad, called Superkill. And it's amazing. And then segued into things like Mother by Danzig with the Temptations' Papa Was a Rolling Stone over the top of it. George Michael's Kiss, Never Without Your Love. So it's Love Gun over George Michael. Just tons of awesome Bob Marley and Billy Idol with the Rebel Yell. And it's
so sophisticated. Because like you said, you can say, mashup, and there's a million people who've done like mashups of various songs that sound similar or what have you. Like I don't know, Alan Parsons.
Sure.
They'll compare it, one song with another. This guy is totally
he does Whip It with Peace Cells, but so it's Whip It, but with Megadeth vocals. I'm surprised that he gets such clean bits for these things.
I don't understand completely how he does it
with Metallica.
No, it's
so
amazing.
He's got about 70 of these, and what I kind of wish was there was there's a few cover bands who are kind of corporate cover bands, or they're run like they're franchised, I guess. Corporate isn't the right word. Franchise is more like it. So they have a repertoire, they go to different clubs. There was one that always played close to that I would always hear as I walked to the Draft House when it was on Colorado. And they're really good. Fantastic musicians doing these like spot on covers. I wish that one of those bands would just do this playlist.
Mhm.
Because it's so masterful. And he's not afraid to take the two mashups and then just add, this sounds like it needs a Megadeth solo, or this would be hilarious if it also had Metallica, even though I'm doing these two other bands. Paradise City with Stevie Wonder doing In the City. It's just, the guy takes it to the next level, and I'm usually a little skeptical, or I'll laugh, snigger, oh, that's kind of funny, but holy moly, does he get it?
Yeah.
And that's made me laugh all week, and that's what I keep coming back to. I just put the YouTube playlist on my phone while I'm driving around, and I'm sure some people it would drive them crazy. So if you're anybody in my car, fair warning, you might be hearing Danzig's "Mother Papa Was a Rolling Stone."
It is really sophisticated. I've been amazed by it, and I was what I was thinking of, that, by the way, that people mash up with Alan Parsons was Lady Antebellum.
Oh, yeah.
Their song, yeah, it was "Need You Now" and "Eye in the Sky" are very, but this
It's so
those
good.
songs sound the same. He's picking songs that just simply stitch together beautifully, like nobody's ever noticed before. That's
Right.
astonishing.
It's like you're
yeah.
in another dimension,
Right.
where this was the song that got recorded.
Yeah.
Like we know Bill Withers and we know Pantera, but in this other dimension, those were the same song. That's what it sounds like.
It's
amazing.
It's amazing. Yeah. So thank you for sharing that. So for one thing, I definitely recommend that you check out Drew's graphic novel, Halloween Man versus Invisible Man. And I'm just saying that as a guy, I'm not even a publisher. I don't participate in this at all. I'm just saying I really love it, and so you should check it out.
Well, you wrote the forward. You wrote the forward to it.
Yes, I did. That's correct. I wrote a forward, but that was just me explaining how much I love it. So
your
creativity is
your enthusiasm for it is completely appreciated, and honestly, I think as far as things that I have written, it is one of the things that I am most happy with when I go back and look at it again. So thank you.
Love it. The other thing to say is this is a huge week for me, because Quest for the Nautilus, the new Young Captain Nemo book, comes out this Tuesday. And I'm really excited. I hope everybody has a chance to give the book a shot. And the basic concept is Gabriel Nemo's mother has been kidnapped, and the kidnappers have given him 100 hours to hand over something that they think are in the Nemo vaults, but Gabriel Nemo knows that it is actually buried in the actual Nautilus, which has been missing for 100 years. So he has 100 hours to find this ship that has been missing for 100 years. And it's, he has to figure out, like, how am I going to locate this ship and be able to get there in time? And, considering how big the Earth is, and where the ship likely went, and so forth. It's an event. It's the funnest adventure I've ever written, or at least it's the adventure I've had the most fun writing. So there you go. Quest for the Nautilus. That's coming out this week. And that's it. I am super happy that we took this moment to discuss Invisible Man. We will be back with our next anthology series, because that was what won hands down in our most recent survey. So I'll be setting up a schedule of what movies we're going to be covering. We're going to, I believe, take the next weekend off, and then we'll be back with anthologies. And I think that the first one is Twilight Zone, just because everybody is super stoked about talking about the classic 1980s Twilight Zone movie, with Scatman Crothers and everybody else. So great. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful week.
Good night, everyone.
Night.
Good night.
I